I will start the session. Welcome to the session Unlocking EU Funding for Non-EU Countries. We have designed an interesting roundtable with practitioners from different angles that will analyze opportunities, challenges, and expectations of financial instruments targeting non-EU countries. My name is Silke Müffelmann. I'm the moderator of this session and happy to contribute to the social finance vibe as Frankfurt School. When we talk about unlocking EU funding for a non-EU country, it's very important to underline that the EU and its member states are the largest donor for development aid. From the overall global portion, 42% of official development aid comes from EU and EU member states. When we look, and we wanted to focus this afternoon on the Western Balkans, the EU has an investment plan for the Western Balkans from 2021 to 2027, the programming period, with 9 billion with different sectors, and recently has a new growth plan for the Western Balkans region, also boosting entrepreneurs according to latest figures. So we will see how these official development plans, what is it in practice? What does it mean? On the other hand, what we know when we look at the financing microfinance institutions, the CGAP funding service has a total of $1 billion targeting to the Western Balkans. But what we can see is targeting MSMEs, climate issues, addressing inequalities. Also, there's only a couple, very few, based on the potential, multilateral and bilateral providers are active. Amongst them is the Council of Europe Development Bank. Before presenting the speakers, we will see if I saw their hand raised. Can that be was there a hand raised from the poll? No, there was none. So before we present the speakers, I would like to run 2 polls. One is about the awareness. We would like to see whether the audience has some awareness on what is going on. Please display the poll number 1. So awareness of EU funding progress. How familiar are you with the EU funding programs available for non-EU countries in the field of financing, microfinance, and social economy? We are still waiting. Okay, what we can see is that most of, it's like the same, yeah, very familiar, somewhat familiar, around 45%, and not very familiar, 44%, and not at all familiar are also 13%. So that will give also to our speakers a little bit the audience what the knowledge is and what kind of information we can share. Then I have another question, which is also important since we are focusing on the Western Balkans, but we would like to know for the participants from which region you are coming. So I give now the polls. You can see it. And now please the second poll. So which region you are coming, the participants? Western Balkans, EU, another European region outside of Europe. What we can see is that 38% are coming from Western Balkans, 25% EU, and 19% another European region. And outside of Europe, we have 19%. Thank you very much. So then I would like to present our esteemed speakers for today's session. Can we finalize the poll? Now allow me to present our speakers. So I have already presented myself. I'm Silke Müffelmann from Frankfurt School, Head of Financial Inclusion and Social Entrepreneurship, and I'm very happy to moderate and guide through this session. Next to me, or next speaker, we have Emilia Postolache from the Council of Europe Development Bank, very experienced. Emilia coordinates together with DG Employment the working group on funding under the European Platform on Combating Homelessness. She also represents the bank in European technical and policy fora and works with potential clients and the European Commission on identifying solutions and defining projects that might be financed by the EU. And she has also experience prior to joining the CEB, and she was implementing public infrastructure projects in EU and enlargement in neighborhood countries, where the last one we will be talking about. Then I come to Gabriele Giuglietti from Banca Popolare Etica from Italy, who will bring the private sector bank perspective on the topic. Gabriele began his career at Credito Italiano in 1990 and joined Banca Popolare Etica 8 years later in 1998, where he held several positions, including Deputy Managing Director, Director of Sales and Institutional Affairs, and currently he is the Director of Credit, Institutional and International Affairs, and this is already since 2013, and very good to have him here. He is also in charge of the international development activities of Banca Etica. He is president of CredSud, and we will learn about CredSud, the financial tool of the Banca Etica group dedicated to fair trade and microfinance, which works outside of the EU. And Gabriele is also board member of MFC board. Then last but not least, but very important, because why we are doing this, of course, to help microfinance institution and to benefit the clients, yeah, to impact on micro businesses. We have Professor Assistant Dr. Altin Mucha from Fondibesa in Albania. He is the Deputy Director and Marketing Director of Fondibesa. And we know Fondibesa is one, and therefore we have Fondibesa also invited, largest microfinance institution in Albania, but also very representative for the Western Balkan region. And the institution, you have now 30th anniversary, no, this year, what I have seen. And Altin joined Fondibesa in 2000. He has been part of the whole transformation process of this institution. And as his title also says, he's also a university lecturer and researcher, and has scientific works and publishing in international journals. So we will be very happy to hear from Altin the experience of Fondibesa and what we could do better. Before we start the interventions, allow me to display and to understand for us a little bit more the key challenges that participants have with funding. Please display the poll number 3. Key challenging is in accessing funding. What do you consider the biggest challenge in accessing EU funding for projects in non-EU countries financing microfinance? Lack of guarantees, limited capacity, need for technical assistance, need for debt funding, need for equity. So we have two leading responses: limited capacity and need for debt funding. Then we have need for technical assistance, followed by need for equity and lack of guarantee projects. Okay, thank you very much. And now it's a time to give the floor to the first speaker. Emilia, please take the floor. and she will be presenting the Council of Europe Development Bank's experience in facilitating EU funding to non-EU countries. And I would like to know how you do that, what specific projects you have successfully funded, and can you discuss any partnerships that have enhanced funding opportunities for non-EU countries? Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Emilia.
Thank you, Silke. It is a pleasure to be here today and discuss a little bit about what we have been doing, in particular over the past, say, 15 years, when microfinance became a distinct area of activity. It is not that we had not done it before, but it was generally associated with support for micro, small and medium enterprises as a whole. It was not a distinct area of activity for the CEB. And 2 years back became even a priority area of intervention for the CEB. But before I go into that, as you may not know us that well in the audience, I thought of briefly introducing the Council of Europe Development Bank, or the CEB. As you may see on the screen, the bank operates in 43 member states who have different degrees of ownership in the governance and of the bank, the CEB. It does not mean that what we finance is proportionate to the shares that the member states have, but it really is up to us to allocate about 4 billion euros a year to financing for social development and social investment throughout our member countries without any quotas or earmarks, but only focused on the social impact of the investments that we have been proposed with by our partners. Who our partners can be vary a lot, so it can be anything from a government or a line ministry in the countries concerned to a social economy actor. So, and by social economy actor, we mean a microfinance institution or a non-bank financial institution, or a social enterprise as such, if the investment is sizable enough for us to work with. And what I mean by sizable is that it is usually dependent on the country and on the type of investment. But we, apart from the microfinance sector, we rarely go beyond 2 million in total for a project or a program. The reason we do it is because we don't think we have, well, the operational costs are quite high, and we also don't think that we should be providing this type of almost retail funding or financing when there are other actors on the market with whom we could cooperate. I won't go back into the full history of the bank, which is now more than 67 years. This is just to say that we were initially set up as a fund to respond to the challenges, mostly housing and employment, following the Second World War. And the fund was supposed to be non-for-profit, and the non-for-profit element stayed with us throughout the bank's history. What we mean by this is that we raise funds on the market, and we on-lend the funds. Lending is a core activity of the bank to our counterparties, and we only add our operational cost on top. Anything that is results at the end of the year as an extra, we allocate to what we call trust funds, which we then use to finance technical assistance, capacity building. We've noticed in the polls that capacity was a challenge for most of the people in the audience. And we also use this, and we have used these profits to set up an innovative, at the time, and it still is, we think, mechanism that I will detail later that would allow us to work with microfinance institutions. Lastly, on this slide, or about this slide, is that importantly, we have worked since the early 1990s with the European Commission on promoting social investment, in particular in the countries that at the time were not known or not part of the EU. So that at the time including Romania, Bulgaria, well, of course, the countries in the Western Balkans. And we have continued to focus on these countries when it comes to mobilizing our own funding as well as funding from the EU to bridge financing gaps and to respond to technical assistance and capacity building needs. I have briefly mentioned the fact that we work exclusively in the social sector and focus on social investment. What we mean by that is investments in healthcare, education, housing, but with a focus on social and affordable housing. We look into anything that could promote urban, rural, and regional development as a whole. We provide financing for MSMEs, and as I said at the beginning, microfinance has become a distinct area of activity for us in its own right. What we always look into throughout these sectors are matters that relate to climate change, to gender equality, and to digitalization. I will not dwell any longer on the slide. If you have more details, if you have more questions about the general activity of the bank, I would be happy to respond afterwards. So what have we been doing in countries that are currently non-EU members? And what does this have to do with the EU or with our shareholders that are EU member states? As you may see on the screen, we have mobilized since the countries became members of the bank. I would say significant amount of funding, and the funding is represented in euro millions in blue. For Turkey, in fact, we have mobilized a lot more because Turkey is a founding member of the bank. However, for parity or sort of similarity purposes, I have only used the data that represents active or approved lending agreements beginning with the early late 1990s, beginning of 2000, which is when the other countries on the screen have become a member of the bank. The financing that you see there, again, is not only for microfinance, although there are countries such as in Bosnia and Herzegovina where the total lending for MSMEs, which is we can see in green, represents almost half of the total. As you may see also in the yellow rectangles on the screen, we have also mobilized grant financing from our own resources. As I said at the beginning, we have used and continue using a part of what would qualify normally as profits to do two things when it comes to microfinance. One is to set up a trust fund to guarantee our own lending towards microfinance institutions. The fund is called Social Dividend Account. And the reason we did that is because we need this type of mechanism to keep our AAA rating and to allow us to still have access to funding that would be or continue to be concessional for the market. The same account we have been using it for interest rate subsidies. It's not throughout and not for private sector initiatives, but mostly for disaster relief and disaster preparedness operations, such as those in the wake of floods, in the wake of earthquakes, or to prevent floods and earthquakes. This is in line with the requirements of our board, composed of the 43 now member states that I referred to at the beginning. We have also used our profits, so-called profits, so anything that's in excess at the end of the year, to finance two types of initiatives when it comes to microfinance. One is technical assistance, that is assistance to the microfinance providers, that can be microfinance institutions or non-bank financial or even bank financial institutions offering microcredit in case there were no MFIs on the market, to target specific vulnerable groups. This is because for us, having or allowing for the inclusion of socioeconomic inclusion of vulnerable groups is a key concern. And the other thing that the other activity that we have been financing and that we are also looking into increasingly is to provide grant financing for business development support services or other non-financial support services that the microfinance providers provide or ensure to their clients. We have, if you have been part of the previous session with EIF and EIB colleagues, as well as DG Employment, you may have heard of products that we will be launching soon that we're about to conclude with the DG Employment, and we will launch through a restricted call for proposals to blend European Social Fund plus financing with our InvestEU-backed loans to cover primarily business development support services. This is something that we are planning and hoping that we would be able to put in place for the Western Balkans in the second half of next year through a platform that is called the Western Balkans Investment Framework. How we do it, and to go back to your question, Silke, how does funding work and cooperation with the European Commission work, and what sort of opportunities are out there? The cooperation with the European Commission, as we may all know, and if you have tried it, we can safely say that it takes a little bit of time to materialize. Also, it requires a significant amount of data to justify and define the project and the program of support, in particular with a focus on the what is usually called additionality. And by additionality, it means anything that would enable the beneficiaries to do extra. So on top of what is usually done as business as usual. It also requires partnerships, active partnerships in an ecosystem that is, if not mature enough, on the point of getting consolidated. building on complementarities with such institutions that are part of the partnership, and also equally important, work with the final beneficiaries to define a program or a project. And this is why we have started with great support from MFC, thinking about mobilizing additional EU funding for microfinance providers in the Western Balkans. We are only halfway through it, and we will reach out to you, and we are available to discuss some more in the coming months, so that whatever we manage to put in place with DG NEAR responds to your needs. So partnerships are key. Complementarities with existing financing instruments is also important. Time and patience and resources to be invested in the discussions and negotiations with the European Commission to make a product work. The source of financing that we have in mind and that you can also look into is the Western Balkans Investment Framework. The initiative has a website, and I would be happy to share the link in the screen. The funding comes from an EFSD Plus, or European Fund for Social Development Plus. And the funding consists of guarantees, including portfolio or third-party guarantees, investment grants, and technical assistance. The CEB is not a counterparty for the moment of this fund of EFSD Plus, but we are a founding member of the Western Balkans Investment Framework, and on these grounds, we are looking into expanding our collaboration with the WBF to include microfinance and social economy actors in the region. Then as you may see, we also operate in the Republic of Moldova, in Georgia and Ukraine. There, we work with separate facilities, also managed by DG NEAR, and we have a similar program in mind, which is focused on blending our lending with technical assistance for capacity building to microfinance providers and non-repayable support to cover at least a part of the business development support and other types of non-financial services that are offered. The facilities that are available for such initiatives in the region are two: the Ukraine Investment Framework and the Neighborhood Investment Platform. I'm mentioning the names in case you want to look them up and see what they are about and what could be available. Why such platforms are available to institutions like us and not directly maybe to institutions like you? You could ask the question, and it's a legitimate question to ask. This is because in order to manage and operate with EU funds, since these are public funds, there is a complex process of being audited and becoming what is called or usually referred to as pillar assessed. And there are several chapters and pillars against which one is assessed, including when it comes to guarantees and lending, having a certain credit rating, but then also having dedicated human resources to manage and check and implement the EU funds according to best practice and transparent rules on the deployment of public funds. So it's quite a complex machinery, and you need a good amount of people to make this type of instruments work. This is why there are maybe a handful only of institutions that work with this type of facilities. However, going back to what Silke mentioned at the beginning, and that's the last remark from me, the beginning of the presentation, and that is the reference to the reform and growth plans and the focus on entrepreneurship. If you Google the facility, you will see that half of the funding would go to the budget of the members. In this case, in addition to the Western Balkans, there is also Moldova, with whom such a reform and growth plan is being discussed at the moment. And a part of this direct budget support is meant to be used to reform various areas of activity in the countries concerned. And in some countries, there is a focus in the agendas. The agendas can be found online on enabling or creating an environment, business environment, where entrepreneurship can flourish. So whereas you cannot really see direct financing maybe for you, so that is for social economy actors, coming out of this reform and growth plan, there is, I would dare say, a good amount of benefits in having the reform agendas associated with this facility implemented by the countries. The agendas are not the same because the countries are at different stages in their alignment with the EU acquis. So you may see important differences among the countries, but there is indeed a focus on creating a more transparent and efficient business environment and on not leaving people behind. When it comes to the other half of the fund that are available for each of the countries, the funding will go again through the same instrument that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the Western Balkans Investment Framework. There is a lot of focus on skills, education, and training, in particular for underserved groups in the countries. However, it is not yet clear what type of projects and programs will be deployed. We are only at the beginning, and the mechanism of allocating, designing, or spending programs will only be known most likely at the beginning of the year. That would be all from my side. For the moment, happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Emilia. This is really excellent. It's like an encyclopedia, what's going on right now. Thank you very much. And we have exactly also a question here or a request that may I get the name of the website for the funding you mentioned. Maybe all the website, I would suggest, since we don't have the chat in the materials for the webinar or later on, that we may insert a slide after your presentation where you can put all the web links after the session. Yeah, so that in the materials, absolutely. No, I would say. And then I hope that works for everybody. And then I have here a question from Valbona from Noah, Albania. When you were talking about, will there be an equitable distribution of these funds, or will the division depend on the demands that will come from all the Balkan countries? That comes from Valbona from Noah, Albania. So what is your experience or your vision on this?
So if the question is about the EU funds that already exist, the distribution is really based and is driven by the demand. And what you may see, and I'll include the link in the PowerPoint presentation, as Silke rightly mentioned, is that the number of actors who are currently part of these initiatives is quite big and varied across the countries. On the website, you can also find the aggregators, so the main institutions who are responsible for making the funding available even further. And I would encourage you to contact them. You will see names like, in addition to EIF, so the European Investment Fund, or the EIB, European Investment Bank, there is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. There is also EFSE that you may know. There is GGF, so the Green for Growth Fund, all initiatives that have benefited and will continue most likely to benefit from this type of funding from blended finance from the EU. And I know there were a series of events to promote the funding in each country, led by the engineer. And what we have heard in the events and throughout my experience with the WBF, which now dates back to 2012, is that there is a lot of willingness and interest to make the funding work for as big a number of institutions as possible. If the question refers to the funding from CEB, we have, as I mentioned before, we have we are pillar assessed, what is called pillar assessed. And what we have is a rule, and is that we try to create a competitive process through which we allocate any funding from the EU. What I mean by this is that we usually do what I'm doing now, that is announce to the public that we are working on something with the usual disclaimers that it may not materialize. We are too early yet, but we are open to discuss. So if there is interest and you think, or it may not be, you may not even be sure if you are interested, but you would like to know more, you can reach out and we would be happy to explain what we are thinking about. And then once the funding materializes and we can conclude an agreement with the European Union, we launch a call. Now the launch may be public through our website. This is what we usually do. Or we launch what is called a restricted call in case there are restrictions on eligibility. But when it comes to microfinance and social economy actors, we usually make the call public. And I would be happy to, as I said, to stay in touch and
very good.
Explain how the whole thing works.
So maybe the last question, and then we go to the next speaker. Is there any specific criteria for Western Balkan countries, especially for MFI or non-bank with a 100% common share? That means private sectorly owned, I assume. Yeah. Is there any criteria?
For us, for the CEB, and this also goes with the European Commission colleagues, is that we need to see a form of ethical lending when it comes to MFIs, clearly reflected in the way the organization works. And then there are a number of criteria, but these are usually assessed on a case-by-case basis, depending on the target groups that that you work with, and to see if there is alignment. But usually in the Western Balkans, we are clear. I mean, we are easily aligned because what we would like to do is to support, for instance, rural communities, rural entrepreneurs, underserved, with a business model that is really a subsistence model, and which is constitutes a group that you also work with in the Balkans. Then we are also interested in promoting access to financing, as well as improving skills among vulnerable groups such as Roma or other ethnic minorities, displaced people, because there is still a history of displacement in the region following the conflicts of the 1990s. We are also quite interested in promoting entrepreneurship among the young who are unemployed or who are not in training or actively looking into training or employment opportunities. So I think there is a strong alignment in principle with the MFI model. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Emilia. So now it's time to give the floor to Banca Etica from Italy from a private perspective. How an EU bank support non-EU MFIs. The floor is yours, Gabriele. And I think you wanted first to display a video, no? Thank you very much. Before I give the floor, we have some questions and when preparing. And of course, we already saw this wonderful video which dived us into another world, but very similar, I think, what we have talked right now. So what are key funding programs available for non-EU countries? And of course, we are also focusing always on Western Balkans. Then how can organizations from non-EU countries effectively apply for these funds? And another point is also what common challenges do applicants face in accessing EU funding, no, when they are coming out of. Okay, the floor is yours, Gabriele.
Thank you very much indeed, dear Silke. Look, I think it's better to explain that we started as an MFI 35 years ago, then we transformed into a bank according to the Italian law. Now we operate both in Italy and Spain as a bank fully dedicated to social enterprises and families. For the activities abroad, there is our history, I should say. It means that we are strongly engaged in microfinance and fair trade organizations, because we started as an MFI and we started from the not-for-profit system in Italy. I mean, associations, NGOs, and fair trade organizations here. So, the video is has been prepared for our General Assembly 1 year ago. And the figures are not correct, because today the portfolio dedicated to microfinance is 30 million euros, which is a small figure if you consider the market of microfinance, which reaches more than 200 billion euros in the world. But through the connections we have, the relationships of Microfinance Center, you have already said that I'm Vice President of Microfinance Center. And I say hello to my colleague Arman, who is connected today. Through the connections with the microfinance networks in Africa, in Palestine, Latin America, in Eastern countries, mainly in Balkans area, we act directly. But our portfolio dedicated to international cooperation is much more than 30 million euros. It is around 200 million euros. It is more or less 5% of the total portfolio of the bank at the moment, through guarantees and direct lending. So today, the main activities of the bank, the main programs, well, there are some programs I will not talking about that are in the slides, but we are not interested today in what we are doing in Africa with Caritas Africa and the Bishops' Conference of Africa, Bishops' Conference of Italy, but it's microfinance. We are not interested today in what we do in Palestine, which is microfinance, with 2 actors of microfinance there, funded by the Italian cooperation. And we are not interested in the 3 countries which were operating in Latin America. But we are interested in what we are going to do with what we are already doing in Western Balkans. Well, we started through the cooperation with MFC and ANFI 4 years ago, back there. Today, I have 2 colleagues in Bosnia and Herzegovina for an evaluation for a long dossier, and they will attend the conference, which will be held in Sarajevo by the end of this week. And I should say this. Banca Etica, for the loans disbursed to those who are considered unbankable, 50% of the social enterprises financed by Banca Etica have been refused previously by the other banks. So what I say is that we consider the access to credit as a human right since our very beginning activities. So being with those who are migrants, Emilia was talking about Roma. For us, it's not an issue dealing with the Roma, but it's very important dealing with those are migrants and defavorized people in our country. I mean that we started lending to cooperatives which are working on the assets confiscated to mafia, to cooperatives working in the prisons in Italy, and to those who are considered not bankable, as I told you before. So microfinance is part of our vision, is part of our sharing, our capacity, is part of thinking to the better world, because we give an opportunity to other people. So what we do now in the Balkans area, we have disbursing around 10 million euros, mainly in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there are colleagues from Albania will start next year. Montenegro, Kosovo, and Serbia. The idea is and the program officially approved last year by the engineer is an engagement of the bank up to 30 million euros in the next 4 years in the region. What we need is important, because when you have done the evaluation of the needs, all of the MFIs attending this meeting were answering technical assistance. Technical assistance is simply necessary in order to share all the knowledge we all have, and we must share it. But for us as investors, either in Africa or in Palestine or in Latin America or in the Balkans or in the next future, even in the Caucasus, is necessary having a guarantee fund. The Italian cooperation has understood very well these. So the activities in Palestine, even if we perfectly know the situation, are covered with a very small guarantee fund. And through the very strong relationship we have with the MFIs which are involved in the activities we are carrying. So what I mean is that we do not act alone, never. We act through the networks and through the national networks. We ask for guarantee funds in order to multiply our capacity of intervention. So what is happening with DGNIR and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, which is the Cooperation Investment Bank of the Italian government, is reaching microfinance entities in 6 countries of the Balkans area through our lending, which is a low-cost lending because the interest rate is political. If the question is how much is 5% for a 3 years long-term loan, and we lend at the same interest rate in Palestine, Burkina Faso, and in Peru, for example, because we consider, as I said before, to lend money in order to share an opportunity. Of course, the bank is profitable. Of course, we have to pay the salaries. We started in 13 people. Today, we are 500 people working in Italy, Spain, and abroad. The level of the not performing loans is less than 1%, because, first of all, we lend through a social impact evaluation through our members, and then we make organize the dossier from the economical and financial point of view. Thank you. This is the program in Palestine. We go to SAFE, please. The following one. This is Amen in Africa. Okay, perfect. SAFE. This is what I was saying before. The engagement is for the bank 30 million euros in the next 4 years. In the Balkans area, and we already started this program, even if we have not signed the contract, but because we strongly believe in microfinance, strongly believe in the relationship we have stated during the years. Look, there are 2 laws in Italy who acknowledge Banca Etica. This is very important for the transparency, first of all. We use in the loans, which are all published, but even in all the details of the bank, even the salaries are published and are transparent according to the national contract of the banking system, and we earn much less than the other colleagues. Then I add that. There is the law on international cooperation of our country, which acknowledges us as a pillar. We are not pillar assessed as, of course, the Council of Europe Bank, but we are evaluated as a partner of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, mainly in microfinance. And then the second important thing is in 2017, the Italian Parliament acknowledged us as ethical finance banking establishment. We are the only one in Italy. It's the first law in the world which acknowledges ethical finance. So if we are talking about ethical finance, we mean transparency, first of all, impact, second, and third, a strong relationship in order to build up new opportunities for people, for all people, without evaluating anything except the fact of being human. So I think that, as I told you before, and then I am at the end of my speech, the microfinance market is huge. It's around 250 billion euros in the world. What I propose is to strengthen the relationship among the National Federation of Microfinance, the networks, EMN, Microfinance Center, and so on, but with all the investors, because I really think that cooperating is much more interesting than competing. And if we want to fight against poverty, we have to do it all together. Otherwise, we will not be successful in what we would like to do. Thank you very much for your attention. Silke, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gabriele, for this very nice video and also this very different perspective, and happy to see that you are planning for Western Balkans, or you are already in the implementation of additional funding to what is already there. I'm not sure if some participants have a question for Gabriele. If you do not have, I have. So when there's a microfinance institution from Western Balkans, what should they do to get access to this funding, what you mentioned, the last opportunity? What are the steps for the SAFE program?
Well, of course, we attend all the meetings, the conferences, and so on. So we are quite evident when we attend the meetings, and they can contact directly us. There is, of course, the access through the federation. For example, Microfinance Center perfectly knows us, so they can address directly the requests coming from the Western Balkans at the moment, not from the Caucasus. And we start in 2026 going on with the other regions. And they can access through the National Federation and then through Microfinance Center to us. It's quite easy. Otherwise, check through the website. Sviluppo Internazionale is the mail, and they can directly access to us.
Okay, so we have a link or something we can share. We could share also.
I will write in the chat.
Okay, and then we will integrate it also in the presentation. So I think this is always important. If somebody wants to go quickly, directly. Thank you very much. For example, Altin, do you have already applied for this SAFE?
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
You didn't know.
It's very useful information, and we have to apply. Further this, we have tried to set a kind of application to the CEP, Central European Development Bank.
That is one experience.
Anyway, we believe that it could be a kind of very good possibility for all the microfinance practitioner, as we are in the Western Balkans.
Perfect. So now we are at our last, but not least speaker. So very important, because you are presenting the intermediary, which then has a direct connection with the beneficiaries, which we all want to support.
Right.
So now we are coming to Fondi Besa, and so how is this now from a MFI perspective? And I will present a little bit my thoughts, and then we'll listen to you. Of course, you are a large institution, so you have some case studies, you have some examples which have been successful for different funding sources, and then how stakeholders can ensure sustainability and impact, what lessons learned we can have for future funding application, and what, since you are also representing the industry in Western Balkans, yeah, so what expectation Western Balkans microfinance institution from the European Commission? They are not here, but I see Emilia knows very well the thinking of the European Commission. Then we will also hear some other questions, but I will have it at the end of the presentation. So the floor is yours, Altin.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going through some main presentation, our experience which we had with the Guarantee Fund. Just to know, just in Fondibesa nowadays present the biggest microfinance institution, as I have presented in the information. Nowadays we have a portfolio at about 150 million euros, and the active client number more than 27,000 active clients. We are, let's say, we have our activity all over the country. Well, nowadays we have more than 80 offices all over the Albania, and we, let's say, think that we are present in all the niches of the market where the banks or the other operators are not yet present. Fondibesa is non-banking financial institution, and as a non-banking financial institution, our activity is regulated by the central bank, and under this license, we are allowed to provide all kinds of lending, including consumer loans, providing guarantees and taking commitments, and advisory services. Anyway, our main target are let's say micro and small businesses, even the consumer loan. As total, we have usually we disburse annually at about 80 to 85 million euros, which is considering the capacity of market in Albania. You know, Albania is a small country with which account the GDP less than 15 billion euros. Our activity can be considered pretty good enough to cover the needs of the market we intend to be present. We had very good experience with program for employment and social innovation, Guarantee Facility. We started to implement this program in the mid of the 2016, and the objective of the Guarantee Facility was to increase the availability and the accessibility of the microfinance for two main categories: vulnerable people who wanted to start up or to develop their own micro enterprise, and existing micro enterprises in both startups and development phase. In particular, micro enterprises which employ people. The Guarantee Fund was provided by the European Investment Fund, and under this program, we disbursed as total about 1,400 loans, with a total amount disbursed more than 6 million euros. It was a good experience for us, because through this experience we learned how to apply, how to follow the procedures, how to deal with a kind of special, let's say, requirement from the European Union condition, and it was a very good experience regarding this. What I explained regarding the steps which we followed up. It was the application selection agreement. As first we applied for this in 2015. After that was a kind of process of pre-selection. The due diligence took place, signing agreement, and after that we start since 2016 to implement the agreement. The main challenges which we have to face. We're designing to specific loan product, agro, BES agro, and BES youth loan, elaborating the necessary regulation, because we have to, let's say, to design the product in accordance with the specific of the market, specific area of the market where this product will have to be delivered. And we have to follow further the regulation set by the European Union. Part of this process was the code of good of conduct, which is it was necessary to be realized during the process till the end of the contract. And for sure that we have to improve our MIS system and accounting system to be in accordance with the regulations which will set to the contract. Reporting standards some way were kind of different by the reporting standards which we were used to have in our everyday job. We have to training staff, and based on this, we really believe that it was a good experience. Kind of challenge, but it was good experience, because based on this, we feel ourselves more comfortable to approach or to apply for similar program or projects to the European Union initiatives. I am not going through detail about the loan terms, but the maximum loan terms were 25,000 euros, as usually is the standard for this kind of program. And no mortgage was required. The guarantee rate was 80%. The guarantee cap rate was 4.1%. What I can say is that this experience was very useful for us because we starting implementing the product for the rural area where we are not present till that time. Nowadays we have, let's say, about 14% of our portfolio which was dedicated to the agro loan, the rural area. We based on this, we, let's say, try to use some kind of standards, which are standards set by the European Union standards, and is good for us. And further this, we think that we feel more prepared to apply for other projects. Further this, we have had a loan agreement as a European Bank for Reconstruction and Development for one of that, it was GEF, Green Energy Efficiency Financing. It's the total amount of this loan dedicated for the green efficiency financing was at 3 million euros, and we have other loan from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development for 5 million euros, which was dedicated for the rural loan. These are more or less, let's say, experience which we have in cooperation with European banks or programs. The question is, what are the main difficulties which we have to face in the future? As non-banking financial institution, the main problem which we are facing now is, let's say, a raising fund. You know that the cost of fund is increased all over and we have to deal with this cost in one side, and we have to deal with the risk of the market, because the target of the market which we are dealing with is much more risky than the market in which the banks have to deal in their everyday business. So far, I can say that the main problem for at least for non-banking financial institution in Albania is to secure funds for a raising activity. We plan for 2 forthcoming years to increase the activity, and in the end of 2026, we plan to achieve a portfolio more than 200 million euros. But to achieve this, we have to plan new services, new product, but at the same time, we have to deal with the fundraising, internal and external fundraising sources. And this is one of the other problems, sorry. More or less, regarding the microfinance in Albania, you know, it's a sector or its industry nowadays is well developed. There are a lot of operations which operators all over the in Albania, and the total outstanding provided by the non-banking financial institution, even the saving and credit unions, account about 5% of the total outstanding of the banks. Regarding the outstanding, it's not big enough, but regarding the presence in the market and the category of the business or the individuals which microfinance serves, it can consider very, very useful.
Thank you very much, Altin, for this. And maybe we have also some questions already in the chat. Yeah, so I saw. There's one question from Valbona. Altin, for those loans, did you have criteria? What was a requirement from EBRD? It's referring to the EBRD loans.
Regarding the EBRD loans for the GAF program, Green Energy Efficiency, the loans have to be focused specifically in activities which are in accordance with the criteria. Only for financing all of the business or even the individuals which use this loan to buy the solar panel and this kind of, or to finance this kind of activity, which were in accordance with the target or the project, the agreement signed. Regarding the agrofinance, specifically, you have to provide loan in the agro or agro-processing sector, and you have to, let's say, to formalize this loan only for the farmers which have, let's say, which we consider a special number registered as farmers in the local district. This where more or less there are kind of, let's say, criteria or restriction, and reporting has to be made in accordance with this criteria, and the restriction as they will set on established in the agreement, in the contract.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope that satisfied the information. Maybe I have one question related to this, myself also being a former practitioner in microfinance. Did you count on any technical assistance, capacity building support? Because to invest in green economy and agribusiness is very specialized, no?
Right.
To the usual microfinance.
All right, exactly. Regarding the agreement for the green energy efficiency financing, we got a package from the ABRD regarding the tailoring products and training part of the staff, our staff, loan officers. That was what we do. Regarding the other agreement for financing, agro-financing, we don't have any special package.
Okay.
Training assistance, sorry.
Okay. Are there any specific question for Altin? If not, we will come to the general discussion part. If they are not, maybe we go to the general discussion a little bit, and it's also for my panelists a little bit what, for example, for Emilia and Altin, more for the EU funding, what advice would you give for organizations from non-EU countries that are applying for EU funding for the first time? Yeah, so it's not the ones, but when you apply for funding for the EU, do you have some tips?
You know, applying for EU funding for our side, it's difficult in beginning because you know, we didn't have expertise. We are used to deal with the domestic market, on which we are much more familiar. But regarding applying for the EU funding, let's say, is kind, if I can consider, kind of bureaucracy, which is different, and which have some kind of specific requirement under which, as to apply, we have to go through. So far, we didn't have expertise. Second is that there are some kind of reporting which we have to deal, because we have to, let's say, to adjust our reporting system in accordance with the reporting system or reporting requirement from the EBRD, for example. In beginning, it is not so easy. Anyway, we think that we have standardized these procedures. We are getting much more familiar what kind of structure, requirement, reporting requirement these funds have. And as I previously explained to you, it was very good experience.
So you need one funder to break the ice, no?
Exactly.
For the EU funding.
Exactly, exactly. It doesn't mean because the other funders can have specific requirements. But more or less, as I see, the standard is more or less similar. It's
so
not exactly
we'll help
the same,
you with
but
CB and
yeah,
CB. What tips do you have?
Yeah, this is what I can say. But the main problem for the microfinance institution in Albania, at least I'm talking on behalf of my institution, is that fundraising to guarantee the increasement of the activity, to growth. Because, you know, as beginning, we have to think for where the pipeline or the funds will come, and after that to do the projection, to think for the new products, to think for the new niches of the market, and so on. And even this, the main problem is the risk. We have to deal with the biggest risk compared to the bank operators.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Emilia, do you have something to add from your perspective for a new applicant?
I heard about bureaucracy reporting risks and the fact that you need to adapt from Altin. I think that summarizes it all. The only thing that I would add is not about technical skills or knowledge, because this is what you have already. I would say it's more about having at least a 5-year plan, because we work with a little bit of a longer term plan when it comes to granting the funding on the lending side. And if it's about grant financing, there's always this question about the grant being used to allow the institution to do extra. So something on top that we just need to conceive together, but extra that would not deviate you from your main purpose. So we never expect that to happen. We just need to find a good cause to work together on. And this, all that may take some time. In the end, we, because of the internal screening processes and the discussions and all the, the requirements that Altin has rightly pointed out, we may need at least 6 months to make the funding available.
Okay, that's also nice information. And Gabriele, maybe also for you, your investments are about impact, and how do you measure impact of projects funded by your bank in non-EU countries? No, which metrics are most effective? You are all over the place, so what is important for you as a bank?
It's very important. Thank you very much indeed, dear Silke, for this question, because for us it's very important to evaluate before the impact. If we do not lend to anyone in the world, we lend money to those who have a strong social impact project, and then they are reliable from the economic and financial point of view. First of all, one would like to measure the impact. This is the reason why I told you that at the moment we are reaching only through the microfinance activities more than 1 million people. So we want to measure how many people they reach, how many people in rural areas, how many women, first of all. My president, Anna Fasano, started her activities as a volunteer in Sierra Leone in microfinance 30 years ago. And this is very strong, and she is very strong in evaluating the impact of the activities of the bank. And all the bank wants to measure what we are doing through the loans we disburse. The reason why we publish all the loans on our website, the amount where to whom, then gives the opportunity for us to publish even our impact report every year. In all the areas we reach, we go and we evaluate the measurement of the figures I've already explained before. For us, it's very important. We are not here in order to do business for business. We want to do an impact finance, which is social finance, which is ethical finance in full transparency.
Thank you very much. And I see there are some participants very keen with the links. Emilia, I think maybe you can share 1 or 2 links in the chat. Meanwhile, I will wrap up the session. We are almost done, but I have another poll for you. So this afternoon, we have talked about unlocking EU funding for non-EU countries. We have seen very interesting perspective from a multilateral development bank, CEB, how entering into this topic with the procedures, and which is linked also to other programs in the country. So it's not a one institution activity. Then we have seen as a EU bank, Banca Etica, what Banca Etica is doing, and also the upcoming program, which is already running for the Western Balkans. We have seen this also how to access. And last but not least, we have seen the experience from Fondibessa, and this is maybe important. I saw the number of employees of Fondibessa and has more than Banca Etica, but your challenge is, and what is of most of MFIs in Western Balkans, that you cannot capture deposits. Yeah, so you need to ensure your growth through funding, and therefore it's very demanding to dive the institution through the upcoming years with all the changes in the also geopolitical sphere. Yeah, so I see this. And maybe a last poll. So after what you have heard, we would like to see the final poll, future engagement with EU funding. So how likely are you to engage with EU funding opportunities in the next 12 months? So very important also for our participants. There's quite a demand for those that need to access funding. Yeah, so very good. We have at least 75% very likely, and 25% is somewhat likely, and others have not yet an opinion. That's also fine. Thank you very much. And maybe thank you for your attendance. And last but not least, we will just now close voting. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you, MFC, for facilitating this very important topic. Thank you, participants. And for us, it's very important, your feedback. So we will have always, at the end of each webinar, feedback session. So that would be great if you could please vote here your session evaluation. And like I said, the links will be shared with the materials. you will not miss out, and we will ensure that it's quick. Also, if you have some questions, you can reach out to us and maybe we can give you some bilateral information. Okay, thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Gabriele, Emilia, and Altin, and Marcin behind the
Ciao,
scenes.
everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.